Scott, thank you so much for being on the episode today. I am so excited. So we kind of talked about football and how you kind of were brought up that way. I'd like for you to explain the story of your sophomore year with your coach coming over to your house. If you know which one I'm talking about, I'd love for you to dive deeper into that one.
Definitely know what you're talking about. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Lucas, for this opportunity. But yeah, I've roll back the clock. My sophomore year of high school, football. Up until that point, I was the running back, and I was proud of that. Like middle school football and my freshman year of, being I started lifting weights like way before any of my teammates did. So like I was a big, strong kid for my grade. And the summer before my sophomore year of football, all of a sudden during the summer, we had started like summer workouts, but not like super intense yet. But the head varsity football coach rolls up to my house for some reason. And I'm like, what the heck? And I see him like coming out the window and I didn't know what else to do. So I just went out to meet him. Like I didn't let him come up to the door. I just like went out and met him in the driveway. And I was talking to him, he's just like, hey, how's it going? I was in the area. He actually had a question for me. He wanted to know, and the question he had was, he wanted me to switch positions. He wanted me to not be a running back for the upcoming year, but instead be on the offensive line. And if you know much about football, like that's a pretty big change when it comes to like, I had been a running back for 4 years where the running back is the one that's getting the ball, scoring the touchdowns, like getting your name in the paper kind of thing. And to be an offensive lineman means you go from like the star to nobody's going to know your name. Like you're just the guy that clears the way for the running back. And as I talked to my varsity, like at first I was kind of like hurt. Like, do you not trust me enough? Like, you don't think I'm good to be a running back? Like, that's why you want me to change? But the coach, he really talked me through it of like, this is your opportunity where you could really serve our team. And it could be a really good opportunity for you to be able to like get more playing time and that kind of thing. And so when it came to the conversation of like, no, this is how you can best serve the team. And it was like, all right, like I'm down. Let's do it, coach. Give me a number. At that point, he's like, what do you want to switch your number to? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know anything about lineman numbers. I just knew all the cool running backs in the NFL. So switch my number, switch my position, and away we went. And just to kind of end this story, if you fast forward during that sophomore year, the starter for the position was the right guard. The starter for that position, he got hurt like the second game into the season, and I got thrown in. And just this young sophomore kid gets thrown into the varsity game, and we ended up like following through, and we won that game. Not necessarily because of me, but just the result of the game. But after that, like I had a bunch of seniors come up to me and were like, hey, like Mathie, we saw you be able to jump in there. Like, let's go. Like, we got you, like, let's help you learn the playbook. And like, they were really supportive. And from that point on, I started every varsity game of football for the rest of my sophomore year, junior, and senior year. And then that later turned into a college opportunity. But it all started with that decision to like say yes to that opportunity. And I'm super grateful for it.
Yeah, I think that's a really great leadership story to kind of kick this off. It really kind of shows the whole we before me kind of thing, the team mentality. And you mentioned something in your story about serving our team and how you didn't know if your coach, you thought that maybe he didn't trust you or it had something like a different ulterior motive because of that. But you said about serving your team and then how the seniors kind of supported you and rallied behind you. I think that's such a cool thing. And then of course to take it into college, that's even cooler to get an opportunity to play.
Definitely. Yeah, it was an awesome opportunity. And like it came from like the head coach being like, the type of offense we run, we can have an okay running back. You would be a great running back, but we can have an okay running back if we have an awesome starting offensive line. And he's like, so that's what I'm trying to do is get us to have an awesome offensive line. And then we'll put whoever we need to in the backfield. Like, and so basically just everybody needs to have their right seat on the bus, like be in the right position, and we'll be able to make good things happen. And that's what we were able to do.
Yeah, definitely. That's really great. So you kind of mentioned about going into college. You got your master's degree from USC in applied performance psychology. And you kind of talked about or wrote about adding purpose to your present through education. And being someone in high school right now, education seems to take up our entire lives. So always trying to find ways to grow and kind of be enthused about school is something that is a continuous struggle for students, I feel. Even if you excel in those areas, you always have to have that extra motivation. So what did you use throughout your time in high school and later in college getting your master's to kind of stay focused on your education and then adding purpose to your life through that education?
Yeah, school for me was always kind of a focus. Like I grew up in a family, like my dad was very academically focused, like, hey, grades are important, like that kind of thing. And so for me though, like there's always, every year you have the classes that you don't really think make sense, right? The classic, like, when am I ever going to use this in my future kind of thing. And you got to find your why. Like every year from high school, from college, and every year since, like there will always be things that you'll experience where nobody's going to give you a good reason of why you're supposed to do it. Like you have to find that. And so in high school for me, grades was a big way of like, that's how I get to play football, right? Like there's like a minimum GPA, like you have to have good grades to be able to do that. But then there was like, for me, I've just never been one to say like, well, I'll just accept the minimum. Like I always want to be able to push. And so I started finding of like, okay, playing football was only going to motivate me to get just like whatever the minimum was, which was like a 2.0 or 2.5 GPA or something like that. Like I can do better than that. Like I know I can do better than that. So finding that motivation in other ways became using the classes for other things. Like I remember for me, chemistry, I didn't like learning chemistry. I could not tell you a lot about chemistry, but I do know that I used that class to learn how to be really organized. Like I really used, like, it shows, okay, this chemistry class, I don't really understand it. It doesn't come easy to me. So let me go all in on learning how to be organized and just being able to break down assignments and due dates and all that kind of stuff. And then that's how I can hopefully pass the class, but then just be better in being organized for all aspects of my life. So I use that as a tool, not necessarily maybe what the teacher would have told me I needed to use it for, but I gave it the value. And so that's how I gave the purpose to my present. Like now I'm taking chemistry, not because I'm going to be a chemist, but because yes, it's a required class, but I'm going to use it so I can figure out how to be organized. Other classes like that were way easy for me, like not hard academically, well, that was the class to be able to meet people, to like learn how to, just communicate and make friends and sit in a different spot every week if there weren't assigned seats, like just meet people and just learn how to be friendly. Like that was the tool that I put in with those. So it was just like every class, if it didn't have a specific thing, like you said, like my degrees are in psychology. So if it wasn't like a psychology class that I was really geared for because of what the content was, then I gave it a purpose. Like this is a class where I'm going to be able to meet people. This is a class I'm going to learn about my organization skills. Like I'm going to get better at that. And so on. So like you give a purpose to your present, you decide. Don't expect anybody else to do it because they're going to tell you a reason and it's not going to vibe with you because it's not your reason. You have to come up with the reason. So you might hear it from someone else or you might have to find it internally, but you got to give the purpose to your present. And so then you're going to be more willing to put in the work and stay focused.
Yeah, that's great. I loved how you mentioned getting something out of the class besides just your textbook and your material like that. Because at least in my experience throughout school, I don't remember history dates or I don't remember math equations. I remember great experiences with a teacher or a great quote that a teacher shared with us. Or like you said in chemistry, how to stay organized or being able to communicate effectively with others. And I think if you look at school and education in that perspective, and be able to find those key fundamentals that you can learn along the way, it makes going to school and going to classes just that much more enjoyable. And you mentioned finding your why. So I know you have your company, Nix Your Limits. I assume that ties into finding your why. And you talked about it with your GPA, about not settling for the football GPA of 2.9 or whatever it was, and how you kind of rised above those limits and you didn't really let anyone set those. So if you could just go into the whole Nix Your Limits mindset and kind of just your ideas behind that.
Yeah, for sure. So Nick, let me back up. First, I've always lived my life with like phrases, like something to kind of keep me motivated, keep me going, like some kind of motto, and like not very intentionally, not like I wake up, in June and like, oh, I need to come up with a new life quote. Like it just naturally happened. And so like for football in high school, my quote, the phrase that I've always said to myself was expect greatness. So much that I even put it like football players will wear like a band on their wrist of like calling plays and stuff. And so on defense, I was the middle linebacker calling plays and stuff. On the cover, I made my own thing that said expect greatness. Like that was just the motivator for me. But fast forward to Nix Your Limits, that became one while I was in college, of just knowing like there was just all these reasons that either my family or like where I grew up or my just who I was, like where I was at in the country at the time. Like there's so many limits. There's so many things that like, oh, people from our school, like people that graduate from our high school, they don't play college football. Like they play basketball. My high school was a super big basketball school. And so there was always the reason of like me in high school being like, no, I want to play college football. Like, oh, like people from our high school, like they don't do that. They play college basketball, but nobody from our school has ever played football. Like, okay. Like even my family's not a super athletic family. And so even still there was that, like people from our family, like we hit the books hard, not the football field. Like stuff like that, or going to USC, like people from my tiny town. I grew up in this tiny little town, middle of nowhere, like 2 hours from Target, like nothing, right? Like nothing, not even a stoplight in my town. And so I grew up in this tiny little town. And when it became a thing of like, I want to go to the University of Southern California, one of the top 15 schools for psychology, and get my master's degree, there was so much of like, whoa, 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 like people from our little town, we don't do that. We don't do that here. And it wasn't like like people trying to tear me down thing. It's just existing limits. And I know we all have our own versions of that, of like, oh, people from our town don't do that, or people from our family don't go into careers like that. Like we don't have people grow up to be doctors or, you know, magazine editors or whatever it is. And so I just came to this realization in college that if I would have lived a life according to the limits other people put on me, I wouldn't be happy. And so I thought, like, you know what, I just want to be able to like live limitless, like break through these limits and stuff. And when I was looking at starting like my company with my Instagram page and all that kind of stuff, I wanted like, what's this message that I can have it be focused on? Because I didn't want it to be like Scott Mathie Incorporated. Like I don't care that much about my name. I wanted it to be the message. And so I thought of like, what are different words I could say to like cut your limits or like live beyond your limits, and like what could be catchy. And I remembered the word nix, which is not a word that's very commonly used, but the word nix, if you look it up, means to like null or like eliminate, refuse to accept, like that kind of thing. So nix your limits means like cut that out. Like yes, there's a limit there, cool, but I choose not to accept it. And so if somebody can tell me like, Scott, you're not going to get, like people from our little town don't go to USC. It's like, okay, like I accept that you're saying that, that's fine, but I choose not to accept it. And so I'm going to apply anyway. Being somebody that travels and speaks all over the country and stuff like that, like nobody from my town does that. It's like, okay, but just because they don't doesn't mean I can't. So that's that message of nix your limits of how. And so what that mindset is saying, you know what, there's always going to be limits based on who I am, like how I grew up, the family I have, the school I go to. Just because they had only XYZ resources, that doesn't mean you still can't push through and do big things. I'm not saying it won't be hard, right? Like to come from like a really small school or like a school that has zero resources and try to get into like a top school in the country of like, you know, if you think like Ivy League, like I'm not saying it's not hard, but I am saying that it's possible. And I've seen enough from my own life. I've seen enough from the students I work with from everywhere that I know that that's true. That you can have limits. Limits will exist, but you can choose not to accept them and still put in the work to make good things happen.
Yeah, so talking about limits, you mentioned your family and friends. How much did that have an effect on kind of your life trajectory? Like, obviously, family and friends are really supportive in areas, but they can also kind of hold you back in others. How was that experience for you growing up?
I think first, I'm super grateful for my friends, all my friends in high school and the friends I ran around with and stuff. But I could see early on that I had just like higher expectations than my friends did for things like grades, some, things like athletics for sure, and just like career trajectory. Like if I were to live according to the limits placed on me, I would have grown up to like go to the community college, go to a local school in Utah, go back to my hometown, be the US history teacher, and be the head football coach of my town. And like, now I'm not saying like anything against that. If that's like what you feel like you want to do, go for it. But for me, I was just like, but I feel like I could do so much more. My friends, they were okay with that. like one like wanting to take over the family business, one to take over the family farm, like one to, just like start your family and figure it out, but you want to stay in our hometown. And that was fine for me, for them to have that, but that's just what I didn't want for me. So I saw that like there was a natural thing that it was just like, oh, that's just Scott's thing. And you're going to find that like, even if your friends don't have the same goals, or like anyone in your friend group or in your class or your town or whatever, if you see that they don't really have that same like vibe, those same aspirations and stuff, that doesn't mean you have to cut them out of your life. Like, I'm not saying don't have any friends, but you will notice that they will just let you do that on your, they're not going to come with you though. And you got to be okay with that. If that goal is that important, you got to be okay with that. If you're not okay with that, then you lower the expectation. You say like, okay, like my friends aren't going to ride with me to that big school or to that big goal, so let me lower the expectation. Or you just let that be your thing. And so for me, that's how it was. My friends, like they loved playing sports, but not like all day, like I did. Like they didn't love football like I did. So like I worked out on my own. I didn't let their decisions impact my results. They didn't want to come work out and do extra workouts at 6 a.m. every day. So I went by myself. Like, it was fine. Like, okay, cool. You don't want to come? That's fine. I'm still going to go after it because that's my goal. That's my priority. So still had great friends all throughout school, and still to this day. But because we noticed like that difference in expectations, I had to find it myself, and I had to put in that work myself. Family, kind of the same way. There's still plenty of things that I have as my focus of my future, the goals that I want to have, like whether that's like how much money I want to make or the different things I want to do for business or all that kind of stuff that I haven't even told my family about. Not because like I don't think they're going to be mad about it or like try to talk me out of it. I just know they're not going to understand. So I just kind of hold that closer to the chest. And like, I know they're not going to understand, so they're naturally going to let those limits happen. So let me just not even talk about it. I'll talk about it later, which leads to another phrase that I use a lot called watch my results. And that's what I use a lot for that. It's like, you know what, there's going to be negativity, there's going to be stuff. So I'll just save myself from hearing it from other people. I'll just go do it. And then I can say, watch my results. Like the results happen. There it is. But anyway, that's a little bit more like friends and family. You may be able to elevate your network and find friends that have high ambition and high expectations. Awesome. The world of social media, you maybe can do that even more than I could in high school. Like Facebook was just barely a brand new thing in high school. And so no way near of what you can do now to find a supportive community. And then groups like CTSOs or other clubs and stuff like that, like are way more developed than when I was in high school. So you could still probably find that opportunity to find friends that can meet your level of expectation, your ambition. But if you can't, you can still have friends. You just have to separate in your mind. This is my thing that I'm going to go hard at because this is my priority. And they're not going to come. And that's okay. I'm still going to be their friend. We're still going to do things, but I'm going to still put in the work.
Yeah, I actually had the same kind of going through that same experience that you talked about, how your friend group doesn't necessarily share those same aspirations relative to your passion, whether that be grades or a sport, like in your case, or going into an organization. And I found it helpful to kind of definitely don't push those friends away because they're great just like to hang out with and great just positive. As long as they're positive, great, keep those friends. But I found that you almost kind of have to separate having a good time with your friends and those kind of people from achieving your goals and aspiring to be that better version of yourself that you know that they don't necessarily share with you. And you kind of talked about how you kind of keep that from them. You say like expect greatness is kind of was your motto back in high school with football, and how just kind of like letting them see your results afterwards, I think is really cool. Do you have any other tips for students going through that now? Necessarily their friends don't share their same passions, and sometimes it's really scary to kind of be the smart kid in school or be the insane athlete in school or go join a group and be really passionate about it. What do you say to those kids who want to kind of step out and be different than everyone else?
Yeah. Well, I love that. And, a lot of times if you feel that motivation of like, you know what, I feel like I would be really good at this and like, I really want to do it, but I haven't yet. Why not? And, a lot of those reasons are going to come because of the opinions of others. And I just really want you to be happy. Like, don't you want to be happy? I want you to be happy. So do what makes you happy. And when you get approached by the negativity or the limits from other people of like, oh, we don't do that, or anything like that, like you can just say like, listen, like this is something I enjoy. And like, I know this is super scary to do, but when you say like, honestly, like this is something I'm into, like I just really feel like this is something that vibes with me and like I really want to do it. When you have that conversation, then you're able to be clear. Like that friend can accept you, like, you know what, all right, you're gonna do your thing, cool. Or they say like, well, I can't hang out with you in that way. And like, honestly, like that's not the person you want to vibe with anyway, if they can't support you in that. Like a quick story for me, like I was a big sports guy, but I was also in choir for multiple years of high school. And like I was a singing guy. Actually, I hate this about myself, but like my life mirrors pretty well freaking Troy Bolton in High School Musical. I tell you what, that came out like the year after I joined choir, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But I was a big football guy, and then I joined choir, and all my football friends found out. Oh man, and they're like, hey man, I'm just you're this is my thing. Like this is what I'm just gonna do. And when I kind of spoke up to that, like it's like, okay, like Scott's gonna do his thing. That's just another one of his things that Scott's gonna do. But when it comes to like you wanting to do what you want, you're doing it for your reasons. And so do it. Do it for those reasons. If friends question you about it, it's just because they don't understand. They just don't understand. Like, so that's why there's the natural like jokes of like, oh, only nerds do that, or like only whatever. It's just because they don't understand how important it is to you. So if you just share that with these friends that you have history with, you have a relationship with, of like, or your family or whoever it is, like, no, like this is something I think will be fun. I think it'll be good for me. It's something I'm interested in. Then it's like, okay, cool. Like, hey, that's what Scott wants to do, or like that's what Lucas wants to do to be happy. I'm not gonna stand in the way with that. And even at the, like high school level, your friends, you can respect that. It's scary to step up and speak up for yourself, but I promise you, it'll be worth it.
You mentioned being happy is ultimately kind of the thing that we're all going to strive to be. At least that's what it should be, is to be happy, be satisfied, have a great life with great relationships. And there's something that I've kind of like realized in my life. I kind of call it the multiplier effect. I don't know if there's a real term for this, but it's when like negative effects can build up really quickly if you don't respond or react appropriately. And the same can be said for positive effects. So in my life, getting up early and following my routine, my morning routine throughout my day, huge difference. Completely changes my outlook on the entire day, week, month, year, so on. But can you talk about how in your life, kind of the whole aspect of responding to things that happen in your life and not getting worked up by them, or if they are positive, trying to build upon that positive energy and just continue forward?
Yeah, for sure. So, you if you focus on the work that you're putting in and not just the result, you will be more positive, of more excited about like what you're doing, more fulfilled about the effort that you're putting in. You can't always control the result, but you can control how hard you work at it and like what you do to stretch yourself. And so like for football, I had a way more successful basketball career in high school, like playing the state championship every single year, like always, academic all state, like all that kind of stuff. We had a way better winning, like my junior year, we went undefeated, like way more successful year. My football career, way less glamorous. Like twice we had winning seasons. That was lucky. My high school hadn't done that for a long time. Like it was not like made it into the playoffs, second round of the playoffs my senior year, just because like it was not as successful. You can't always control the result. But like I worked my guts out for football, not really caring. Like I knew it would, the results will take care of themselves, and a lot of it is out of my control. But what is in my control? Well, to be the best version of myself. What is in my control? To beat yesterday's best. Like I'm going to say yesterday I gave my best, so now I got to beat it. Today I got to beat yesterday's best. And so I would go hard on that type of thing. And so then that translated into all other aspects of my life, like being a better son or, brother. Like I got to beat yesterday's best. For college, I had started to, this was kind of a sad thing for me. Like my football career, I had started to get offers from different places, but my parents, because they were very academically driven, they kind of brought the gavel down of like, no, this is where you're going to go to school. And I'm like, well, I don't have offers for football from these schools. I had to do it from all these other ones. And they're like academics is where it's going to be. This is going to be put you in the best situation. So I'm like, okay. So instead of saying like, well, I didn't get a scholarship offer from this school, so I'm not going to go, like, I'm not going to play football there. Instead, I went and walked on. I went to the tryout. I sent in my film. I worked my guts out at the tryout, and I made the team that way. And so, like, it just, stuff will come. Just pivot. Like, you can still take action. You can still go and make things happen. Limits will never stop to exist. They will always come. I pushed through some of the limits that my small town had on me, but I've got new ones now. Like, I got married fairly young, started having kids fairly young, and like a lot of limits came that way. Oh, you're not going to be able to have a successful speaking career because now you have a family. You can't just travel as much. Like, well, watch my results. Like, you can still push through it and do it because you're in control of the work that you do. So the results aren't always in your control, but you can work your guts out. You can pivot and say like, okay, this happened. So is this just a limit that I can nix, or is it actually like a barrier for me? If it is one of those barriers that you just can't control or get around, then you pivot and you keep working. What I'll close on this thought is what you focus on multiplies. So if you're only focused on how many people are telling you no, that's all you're going to see. Is like, oh, like my teacher says no, my parents say no, my friend says no, like the internet says no, like everything says no. Then like, yeah, that's all you're going to see. But if you shift your focus, opportunities are open. And so if you start to focus on the positives or focus on opportunities, then they just start coming. And I saw that when I hung up the cleats from football and said like, okay, let me go into student leadership and really dive into that. It was just opportunity after opportunity have just opened themselves so many times. As I started my career of like student leadership, like I want to help students be awesome at whatever it is they do. That's opened up so many different opportunities that high school version of me would have never even thought of, probably didn't even know existed. But because I say yes to those opportunities, because they bring me closer to that happiness, that thing that I want to do, man, I couldn't be happier. I'm saying yes to that. Instead of just saying yes to a job title, I'm saying yes to opportunities that are going to help me make a good happen in the world that I want to happen. And so it doesn't matter what the job title is. I'm doing awesome things, in my opinion, super fun things that I wouldn't have any other way. And I feel like I'm pretty dang happy because of that.
Yeah, definitely. So with your job, you work with hundreds of students across the country, developing their leadership, working with their organization. And something that I found that you talk about quite often is the importance of self-reflection. And we just got done discussing how to respond to things in your life and how those things kind of build upon those actions that you take afterwards. What are some tips or strategies that kids and students can apply right now that is self-reflecting and they can just kind of take a step back and kind of understand and digest what just happened?
Awesome. Yeah. Self-reflection is so important to just take a minute and like watch your own film. Like that's a sports analogy of like football. Friday night lights with high school, right? Saturday morning, I always watch the film from the game. My sweet mother took it upon herself. She said yes to me asking her to film every single game. And so she would. She had a little hand camcorder kind of thing, and I would throw the tape into the TV and I'd watch film every Saturday morning on myself. And that just helped me make notes of like, ooh, I see that opportunity. I could have done this instead of that, or like that's where I messed up. That's what I did really well, all of that good stuff. But when you translate that to watch your own film about you, to just take time to reflect and like, who am I? What kind of person am I? And what I talk about there when it's like the who you want to be, like leadership development is often like a huge bottomless pit of like, where do you even start? Like, I don't know. Am I a good person? Sure. Like I try, like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. And I call that the chasm, a leadership chasm. And so there's 5 areas that you can focus on. I'll just list these off quickly of like questions you can ask yourself to like self-reflect. How can you cross the leadership chasm? So chasm is an abbreviation, like it stands for each thing. So first you can ask yourself about your character. Like, do I have character? And you can define that how you want, but there's different traits and characteristics like honesty, integrity, responsibility, that kind of thing. You self-reflect, but you just think about character. Do I have character? Then you say, what about my habits? Like habits. Do I have good habits? Success is repeated. It's never a one-time thing, right? Just like a 4.0 can't be earned by acing the first test and then taking the rest of the semester off. You're not going to get a 4.0 that way. So it's repeated action. So how are my habits? Do I have any? Like, is anything in my life repeated? Do I have structure? Not that like teachers are giving you, but that you're giving you. So think about your habits. Think about the action you take. Do you say yes to opportunities? when there's an opportunity to do a little bit more. Your teacher asks like, hey, you're actually really good at this, or like, I see that you have a lot of interest in this topic. Here's an opportunity. You could be a part of this club or be a part of this group that's doing a little bit extra for this. Would you want to be a part of it? Do you say yes to those kind of opportunities? I remember for me, psychology, I was just kind of jumping into it, and my professor invited me. This was in college at this point. He said, hey, why don't you take on this topic for this research? Because you could have a chance to present it at a research conference. And I was like, I don't know anything about this topic, but sure. And I did that, and that turned into a lot of other opportunities. So action. So CHA, A is for action. S is for skills. Like, what are my skills? Do I have any? And like at high school, like, you might not be a surgeon at this point, but you still have skills. Do you have organization, personal, like, daily planning, communication skills, conflict mediation? Like, do I know what to do when there's beef between my friends? Like, do I know how to de-escalate those situations? I don't know. Do you? And like different skills. Maybe it is like specific work related things. Like maybe you grew up, your family are mechanics. And like, so yeah, I've got some skills there, but just evaluating skills. And then last of all is your mindset. And that is like what our last point that we talked about. Do you focus on positivity or negativity? Like, what is your mindset? Do you focus on opportunities or just what limits you? And just to think through that. So quick recap: character, habits, action, skills, mindset. If you focus on evaluating yourself in those 5 things, you will find areas to improve. And then what you have to do is just not be scared of it. Like, you have to lean into that and not just like, whoop, staying away from that. Like, I can't handle that conversation in my head. I don't want to confront that I'm not an honest person with my friends and I actually talk behind their back all the time. Like, I don't want to confront that, so I avoid that. So many of us do that. High schoolers and professionals that I work with today. Like, it's easy to avoid conflict when it comes to with yourself because it's uncomfortable. You got to lean into those opportunities because that's how you find ways to grow. And then you can be able to put in the work to actually achieve the growth that you're looking at.
Okay, we're going to finish with one final question. Okay. From your experiences, what is it that you found that distinguishes great team leaders and leaders that are in this age group kind of from just the good ones, just the ordinary ones? What is that one thing that you kind of have found that's like a commonality amongst them all?
Awesome. I love that question. And I would have to say what helps you go from ordinary to extraordinary is that word, extra. To go to extraordinary to extraordinary is to give a little bit more, to say yes a little bit extra, to work a little bit extra. Like in high school, I know because I was there. Like, there's plenty of things about high school that you can just kind of do the bare minimum and you'll get by. There's teachers that even if you don't put in the full amount of work, they'll still pass you. Like, there's other opportunity. Like, even if you just do the minimum, do the average, you'll be fine. And so the ones that really step up and really achieve big things, they do extra. They put in the extra work. They say yes to extra opportunities. Instead of just being involved in their club, they try to grow the club. They try to, and sometimes that ends up with them being in leadership positions. Maybe that's like a CTSO, right? Like FBLA, whatever, DECA. They don't just participate. They're like, no, there's a competition. Like, I'm going to really I want to win. Like, I'm going to do the extra work so that I can win or to help our chapter grow or whatever. But extra, okay? What are you doing right now? I guarantee you can do more. All of us naturally kind of do the minimum of what's expected, like, just a regular expectation for things. So evaluate yourself, just challenge yourself to say that mindset of like, what I'm doing right now is ordinary. What can I do to stretch it? What can I do to make it bigger? What limits can I nix? What results am I going after? Let me stretch a little bit further. So extra.
Great. So, Scott, thank you so much for being on the episode today. Discuss some great things and maybe have you back someday. So thank you so much.